Hi, Jared. Thank you so much for joining us on the Next in Line podcast. We're very excited to have you on as a guest today. Now, before
Great
we
to be
get
here.
into all the things that we're going to talk about, I want you to take us back to the beginning and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your career journey and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, and first and foremost, thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it. My career journey isn't all that fancy early on. When I was in middle school, for some reason, I decided I wanted to become an attorney, and never mind an attorney, I wanted to become a labor attorney. I think it had something to do with career day, or I don't
Very
even really
niche.
know. Yeah, yeah. When clearly I did not become an attorney, but I went to college thinking that I was going to go to law school. And so I did a minor, or I did a degree in psychology and sociology, focused on a lot of demographic research and whatnot. And it was all intended to be pre law, but then I never went to law school. But when I started my career, I started at a tech company way back in the early 2000s. They created semiconductors and sold visible laser diodes, the things that we see when we're scanning things at the supermarket.
Yeah.
And it was an electronics tech company, and I was in the HR call center, answering
Wow.
calls from employees all around the country with questions regarding their employee benefits or their 401k. Got a lot of calls from spouses as well. And that's where it all began. Yeah, working in this call center with a headset on. Who would have known that, 25 years later, we would have headphones on for half of our calls?
Literally, I know. That's so funny. And I just want to point out here that you are our first HR leader guest here, CHRO for that. So I'm very
Great.
excited about this one. That is amazing.
Yeah,
Now, I
really
want to
cool.
kind of
Thank
talk
you.
about, yes, of course. I want to talk about your career leading in HR inside of the creative and advertising space that you shared with me. And
hmm
what's unique about leading people in this fast paced creative industry, especially at a global scale? Because I know you have experience with that.
I do. I do. Pretty much all of my experiences, whether it be through my corporate experiences as a corporate CHRO, or even now into my fractional CHRO and executive and leadership coaching businesses, really what it boils down to in that environment, client delivery is everything.
Yeah.
Nothing moves forward if you're not delivering for your clients. It is absolutely the cornerstone of business, because in the creative services industry, without exceptional client delivery, there's no financial metric that's moved, and that's innovation and relationships, quality, speed.
Yeah.
The joke around advertising and marketing is everything needs to be done yesterday, but it needs to be done
Oh,
quality.
100%. Yep.
You get it, right? You
I do get
understand. And so because of that education that I had within tech and creative and marketing, I became very commercial as it pertains to managing a business, and understanding that the bottom line is everything. But
Yeah.
how can you encourage your people in a positive way to deliver to attain it? And I think a lot of businesses think that that's really unattainable. So really what this taught me at the core is transformation and change is constant. It's inevitable. Creative businesses, tech businesses are constantly growing, evolving, changing. M&A, economic indicators and happenings that are difficult. But the reality
Yeah.
is, one movement finishes, the next one begins. And clients need to feel stability, and they still need their delivery. And that's really the focus there. The globalization actually brings a whole other aspect of consideration into managing a business, because the unique opportunities that come across are different geocultural norms and expectations. And so you can have a US based company that has policies, practices, and programs, and maybe those can remain the same across different geographical boundaries and whatnot, but the application of them has to be different,
Yeah.
because what may be encouraging to somebody somewhere is actually disrespectful somewhere else. And I
It's
love
very
using
true.
a marketing analogy where, and this is taught in marketing school, but Chevrolet tried to sell their Chevy Nova in Central and South America, and it didn't
Mm.
sell, and they couldn't figure out why. And the reality is, right, in Spanish, Nova means doesn't go. So they were selling a
Yeah,
car that was named doesn't go.
that is true. I remember that
Yeah,
actually. I remember that. I
yeah,
did a case study about that in my programs.
yeah. It's fun to talk about, but people are the same, right? Because when you look at what motivates somebody, let's say in India, and you're based in the UK, it's a
Mhm.
completely different set of motivating factors, and it's different things that get them to
100%.
trust you and buy into your direction.
Absolutely. I feel like it's big on the culture aspect as well. Like these everyone in all places all over the world, they have different cultures and the way they do business is very different, right? So
Mhm.
I could see why like even at that global scale it can get, not necessarily sticky, but you have to really be on top of everything when it comes to HR and doing things the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's beyond the HR components, right? Because the HR components are very tactical and process driven, but really the
Yeah.
way leadership operates on a day-to-day basis is that key, especially in that globalized organization.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I kind of want to transition now a little bit into how people think about HR departments nowadays and how they
Hmm.
typically think that you should avoid them, if we want to say it like
Yeah,
that. But,
it's
or if you
true.
can't be friends with them, like we've talked about. But I think that I want to know, how have you worked to shift that perception and make HR feel more human and approachable rather than
Yeah.
an avoidance or, you can't really talk to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a lot of perspectives on this topic, because I believe that HR has the reputation it has because of how it's been practiced, um, dating back to the 1970s. But in general, um, the way organizations have utilized the function, never mind the people that do it, but the function, it's
Yeah.
been kind of a catch-all for a lot of different things. And the reality is, HR used to be in place to protect businesses. Everything was about making sure that you're following the laws and the regulations and the requirements to keep the business safe. And that slowly started to evolve through the 80s into the 90s and whatnot. And during that evolution, people that practiced HR didn't know how to make the shift. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of investment in education and training and development for the HR people. And then you saw things like Google. They renamed HR People Operations, and back then the chief HR officer from Google, Laszlo Bock, he actually wrote a book about it. Um, but that was really just lipstick on a pig. That wasn't really changing the way HR people operated. It was more just renaming it and trying
Yeah.
to get away from the stigma. Um, but I think the key for HR people is to be authentic to who you are and help the population of employees understand that, number one, you're an employee too. You are
Yeah.
employed by this business, and anything that changes, you're impacted as much as they are. And being a little bit vulnerable to helping them to understand that, yes, I support what the business is doing. You can't undermine it, full stop.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're not in the right role. But if it
Yeah.
impacts you and you have concerns, benefit rates are going up. Yes, I have a family and I know that's going to impact me as well. Helping them through empathy to understand it really goes a long way. And so, I think the concept of an empathetic leadership or an empathetic leadership team, empathetic HR, goes well before Gary Vee was talking about it all over the socials. This was
Yeah.
a concept that really started to roll up before him, but I don't think people executed well. And then the last piece that I'll say on this is I think I start every conversation with the same question. Are you looking for a shoulder? Are you looking for advice? Or are you looking for me to take action? understanding that depending on what you say to me, I may have to take action based on my
Yeah.
role and my responsibility. But that really disarms people. And 9 times out of 10, they'll just say, well, I need a shoulder. And they'll vent about something that has no legal or ethical ramifications. They feel better, and you get through it. But when you do that and you're honest with people and you give them that ability to have your ear, and they realize that, hey, I'm talking to somebody who may be able to help me, they tend to open up a lot. And then on top of that, when you're being honest and authentic and truthful, you don't even have to worry about what you said. You never truly have to worry about you said, because you're being genuine, and people appreciate that. The people at work see through all of the garbage. They see through the noise. I know a lot of businesses don't think they do, but trust me, they do. They're just like children. They see right through it.
That's a funny way to put it. And I like actually what you mentioned, like being an empathetic leader. I think that's very important, especially in the role of HR. I haven't heard someone put it in that way, and it's true. I like how you also mentioned that you're just as you're impacted just as much as everyone else because you also are employed by the company too. So they shouldn't,
Yeah.
be upset with you if policies change or, because at the end of the day, it's coming from, the leadership team and, the decisions of, the people running the business. So that
hmm
totally makes sense. And I like that approach. I love your approach.
Yeah, and I mean, look, from as an executive coach and a leadership coach, I
Yeah.
the number one thing that I focus on with my clients is their emotional intelligence, and if you look at
Yeah.
their EQ and how they're applying themselves to the workplace every day, it helps them to be better leaders. And it's not all about HR; it's about leadership. Right? HR is just one little faction of a company's leadership.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking about the leadership, it is actually a perfect transition to our next question. And that's going to be about beyond your CHRO role that you are heavily involved in. Um, you started up with the leadership coaching and everything that you just
Yeah.
mentioned. What inspired you to move beyond, the whole compliance and the structure, more into the coaching and the emotional intelligence piece that you're talking about when it comes to leadership?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's the word tactical, I refer to it more as mechanical. There's a mechanical requirement that HR has within a business.
Yeah,
And it's very much frameworked by laws and regulations and policies and so on and so forth. And I just realized that there's so much more value that can be provided to an organization. Don't get me wrong. That has to be done. There's a place for it. It can be done well or it can be done incredibly poorly. But
yeah,
to me, really, the lever that moves the needle starts with executive and leadership development. And I think one of the really deep areas that businesses don't connect is if you have very well laid out and well positioned leadership within the organization, people will perform better. And when people perform better, they're meeting deadlines, they're making clients happy, they're securing client loyalty and growth. They're free and open minded to innovate and take risks and try without the fear of a heavy hand coming down upon them. And that all directly impacts the bottom line of the business, whether it's through
yeah,
growth, whether it's through financial retention, or whether it's through margin. It absolutely impacts the bottom line. And businesses don't tie A to C when they're looking at the financial health of the business. They're more focused on MRR, ARR. Yes, they're looking at margin and profitability by project or by fill in the blank, but they're
yeah.
not tying back what leadership does to actually drive that.
That's very, very true. You couldn't have said it better. And talking about the emotional intelligence piece and psychological factors that you are kind of mentioning throughout this podcast is we also talked about how you don't consider those really soft skills and how they truly drive business results, as you're saying. Now,
They
how
do.
have you seen this connection play out inside of an organization, especially in the creative space?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, and it doesn't play out in one particular way per se. It plays out in how the organization is moving and evolving and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. But if you can tie it back into kind of one trend, it goes back to when people feel safe at work, they will share their ideas. They will be innovative. They will raise their hand if they don't understand something. We all know somebody, or we've been in the scenario ourselves. I have been in the scenario where I'm sitting at a table, direction is given, I don't understand, but I'm embarrassed to raise my hand and say, hey, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because I think that people are going to look at me like, I have two heads, or my manager's going to say, you're not where you need to be. You should get, who knows, whatever the emotion is.
Yeah.
And I just think, it's not, I think it's scientifically proven that when people feel valued and validated and respected, and secure, they will do more. I
That's
think what
very true.
media shows us today is, people want a paycheck. They want freedom and no RTO. They want a good paycheck, but people have to feel comfortable. That big six-figure paycheck is meaningless to somebody who goes to work and they feel beaten on every single day. And so that
Yeah.
emotional intelligence from an executive standpoint, understanding your own emotions, understanding your own strengths, your own development areas, and then being willing to grow and learn is tremendously, tremendously important.
It is. And you're absolutely right about people have to feel comfortable. I feel that in my own team and in running my own business, right? I've seen it
Yeah.
through all the other jobs I've had too. Is like when you're uncomfortable, you don't end up delivering like you're saying. Like I've been in that same
Mm,
position. You don't want to raise your hand and be like, "Hey, like I don't understand this," because you feel
yeah.
like, people are going to judge you and or think something of you. So I think,
Right.
the common theme here is like to just it shouldn't matter, just push forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they say that the unattainable triangle is quality, speed, and cost, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when you talk about leadership development and we talk about growth here, I would say the triangle is quality, speed, and innovation. And I think that is possible. I don't think it's unattainable. I think it's very attainable. It takes work,
Yeah,
um, but 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 it's definitely something that businesses can do.
for sure. 100%. And now kind of talking about when you're switching gears a little bit, when you're talking about coaching senior leaders in the
hmm
coaching that you do. What's one of the most common blind spots you see and how could you help them close it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed in that the majority of my clients from a coaching standpoint, they're not being told that they have to be coached for remedial reasons. They're coming to me because
Yeah.
they already have self-awareness that they want to grow in some capacity, or they have something that they feel is missing, or in general they just want to learn. So they've already allowed themselves to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But there are times when a CEO or a CFO will call on me and say, hey, we want our leadership team to go through a program or have an opportunity together. And you do sometimes have people who push back on that, for lack of better terms. But once
Yeah.
they start seeing the value and they see that actually they're not alone, that their peers are somewhat in the same boat as them, they open up quite quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though too. I feel like based off our conversation and everything we talked about making people feel comfortable, you probably embody
Yes.
that so it makes it easier for them to kind of open up and be susceptible to change and all of that in their leadership journey, which is really nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to the
And
beginning. Like I said, when you're authentic and when you're
yeah,
true and you're honest, it makes you approachable, and it makes
yeah,
you, it puts you in a scenario where people truly feel that they can open up and go down a journey with you.
for sure. I couldn't agree more. And talking a little bit more about the younger professionals, I know that you kind of touched upon it a little bit when you said that they see stuff on social and they just want the paycheck real quick, and that's what it is. But they tend to skip a lot of steps nowadays. And
They
what's your
do.
message to them about balancing ambition, learning, and patience in the workforce today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm passionate about mentoring younger people and helping them to get where they need to go. Um, when my kids all graduated high school and went off to college, my main gift to them was 3 business books. And I said, at some point during your college experience, you need to read through all of these, and then we're going to talk about them. That included The Richest Man in Babylon and The Millionaire
Yeah.
Next Door and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I wanted them to understand first and foremost the importance of saving and making your money work for you, because I know that the younger generation values their freedom and they're not living to work, they're working to live. So
Yeah.
that was my first gift to all of my children, and we will have that discussion at some point during their college journeys. But I think, very specifically, yes, society leads younger professionals to truly believe that they can start at the top or at the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's somewhat caused by these curated moments that are posted to social media. You're in marketing, that these are curated moments, and they're intended to follow a brand strategy and whatnot. I do it myself.
Yeah.
So it paints a false picture of what they should expect. So my recommendation to young professionals isn't to grind away until your fingers are bloody, but expect to start at the bottom first and foremost. And that comes from the tasks and responsibilities that you're given by your company. That means the salary point. That means having to put in the extra work when it's done. And really just work hard. But most important is be coachable, absorb all of your learnings, but then put your own stamp on it,
Yeah.
because you have no competitive advantage to elevate through your career if you're not putting your own stamp on whatever it is that you're learning. So you have to have your own POV.
Absolutely. And I feel like that kind of ties back into, I like to think it in marketing terms, like you're developing your own personal brand when you're entering the workforce, whether that's
Yes.
not necessarily online, but how people perceive you and how you do your work. I think that
Yes.
nowadays, I agree with you. Like, you got to put your head down, grind, no matter if it's like an entry level role. That's a way
Hmm.
in, a foot in the door. It's a way to start your journey, and not necessarily, like you're saying, the false perception of starting at the top, starting at the middle. Like, that's not
Right.
necessarily how it should go or how it goes, honestly.
Right. And that's why it's so important to do what you love, because it makes it easy to go all in. But if you're not willing to go all in, then you probably need to look at why, what's causing that. And does that mean you're not enjoying what you're doing? If the reason is because you expect that you're going to start at the top, that just needs to be level set. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity for people there. And again, I hang my hat every night on saying you have to put your own stamp on what you learn. Be coachable and learn, and then put your own spin on it.
Yes, absolutely. And now, as we wrap up the podcast, one of my favorite questions to kind of tie in at the end is for someone who's listening, who's trying to step into leadership, maybe like that young leader that's aspiring, to become
Hmm.
into that leadership role, maybe managing their
Yeah,
first team or anything like that. What's one piece of advice you'd want them to remember and walk away with from this podcast?
absolutely. First and foremost, leadership isn't different work, it's more work.
Yeah.
Leadership is not about controlling what people do. It's not about power. It's a completely different skill set. And when you are an individual contributor, you are responsible for what you are producing and what you are delivering. When you're
Yeah.
a leader, when you're a people leader, you have everyone's productivity on your shoulders, and you're responsible for what the entire team is putting out. So it's not just a matter of pushing them to work harder. It's how do you get them to want to work harder? And so it's a completely different skill set. But too often, companies take the best salesperson, the best graphic designer, the best widget maker, and say, well, I'm going to make you the leader. And they don't give them the proper development. And so they just think, okay, well, now that means I'm controlling the situation. And it's not about
Yeah.
control and
Yeah, that's very true. And like you're saying, like companies tend to pick the people that are performing the best in their areas, but maybe not necessarily embody those leadership skills and need to be coached through that as well. It's very important
Yes.
when you're stepping into that role and into that point of your career. And that advice is honestly amazing. And I thank you for that. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share it.